All right, welcome everyone. We are going to do some Hunchly desktop training today. So a couple of house cleaning items first. This webinar will be recorded, so don't fret if for some reason the audio, video, your internet drops or you have to leave for a meeting. It will be put up on our YouTube channel as soon as possible after the webinar is done. Please feel free to use the question and answer box to ask questions throughout. So it doesn't matter what the question is, whether it's investigation related, whether it's Hunchly related, or anything else, I'll do my best to answer them. These are unscripted, so I follow a general kind of template as we go. But really, each one of these sessions is slightly different based on those questions. So don't hesitate to ping me as many times as you like in the Q&A box. Generally going to take about an hour to get through everything. It is not 100% front to back coverage of every little nook and cranny in Hunchly, but we do cover all of the major areas. And definitely feel free to reach out afterwards if you have any follow-up questions as well. All right, with that, we're going to get started. So I'm Justin Seitz. You've probably heard me do one of these before, or at least have heard my name attached to Hunchly. I run the team at Dark River Systems who actually builds the product. And what we're going to do is we're going to just start out by where most people start out, is looking at the Hunchly dashboard. And you can see in the very top left-hand side, I have the newest, shiniest Hunchly installed, which might look even a little bit different. Some of the icons, color schemes, and other things might look a little different. For those of you with accessibility issues, we've put a lot of time, our teams put a lot of time into working within accessibility guidelines, and we're starting to implement some of those to make it easier to use for those that have accessibility needs. So the dashboard in Hunchly is kind of one part of the system. And this is where we manage our cases, where we spend a lot of time reviewing materials that we've captured. But really what Hunchly is known for is its life inside of the browser, where as you're browsing, Hunchly is collecting every page that you browse to. It's taking note of the URL, it's timestamping it, hashing it, storing it on disk for you, so that you have your own little Wayback Machine of every page that you've browsed to while you've been doing your work. Now, when I say browser, I mean any browser that is Chromium based. So what this means is Hunchly will work on Google Chrome, which is what I use, Chromium, the privacy focused Brave browser, or Microsoft Edge. So if you're a Microsoft user and you're using Windows 10, you're already going to have a Hunchly compatible browser installed. Microsoft Edge is now based on Chromium, so you'll be able to use all of those. We do not support Safari, old school Internet Explorer, or Firefox. Now, we would love to, but these browsers do not have kind of the internal machinery for us to be able to do the evidence capture the way we like. So with that, when you get started in Hunchly, and most of us, when we're working on research or working on a particular project or looking at an event, we always kind of operate in a case basis, right? And Hunchly organizes all of your files in a case basis. So what we need to do is start off by creating a new case. You're always going to have an unassigned case. So a brand new Hunchly install is always going to have an unassigned case. This is just a catch-all so that you have a case just in case you fire it up and start browsing and you haven't actually set a case up yet. So let's create a new case. In the top left, we're going to go Add Case, and we're going to go New Case. Cool. So in this case, I've said case about 17 times already. We're going to investigate me. So we always do this on webinars because it's a maximum potential for embarrassment. So all I did was punched in Justin Seitz, hit enter, and now I have a new case. I'm actually ready to go. And really, this is one of the great things about Hunchly, is that to go from kind of zero to capturing hero only takes a couple of minutes and a couple of button clicks. There's not a ton of training involved, actually. So we're done in the dashboard for now. If we're somebody who just needs to go out and start capturing, we've got this new case set up, and I'm going to fire up Chrome. Okay, so in Chrome, the Hunchly extension should appear up here in your Chrome extension bar. Now, sometimes you might not see it right away, so you might have an extension bar that looks like this with this strange little puzzle piece that's just sitting there. What you can do is you click that puzzle piece, you'll see Hunchly 2 here, and click this pin. So when this pin turns blue, it's going to actually pin the extension to your extension bar. Now, if I click on the Hunchly extension, we'll explain a little bit about what we're looking at here. The first thing that you need to keep in mind is that this capture switch is what tells Hunchly to either capture every page while you're browsing or not. So by turning it off, you can see the extension is gray and angry looking, much like myself most days. And if we turn it back on, you're going to see that Hunchly is lit up and ready to go. All right, so there's mouse click one to be aware of. I'll also show you how you can leave the capture system off and just manually capture pages when you want them. Now, this is not how I use Hunchly, but I know that a number of people do. So that's the capture switch. The other thing we need to do is pick the correct case. So we want to make sure that we're working off of the Justin Seitz case. That's it. All right. Couple of mouse clicks. You've got a case set up. The automatic capture is turned on. We pick the correct case. And now we can actually start doing our investigative work. So I'm going to head to google.com. And I've actually just trained you how to do evidence capture with Hunchly. So Hunchly's already captured this page, timestamped it, hashed it, put it on disk. It is actually a court-ready document now that you can submit as evidence that has all of the pieces required in basically every jurisdiction we've ever encountered. Those are the real things that are important. So, of course, a Google search is not entirely useful unless we search for something. So let's search for me. All right, so there's my ugly mug on the right. Now, the great thing is that when you're browsing and Hunchly is doing its capture, it's actually capturing all of the images, the text, all of the links on the page as you go. So all of this stuff is captured as we're browsing. Now, it is important to recognize that some websites do require you to kind of scroll down and, images and stuff will get loaded. So be mindful of that as you're browsing around for sure. Now, again, just to kind of circle back on the notion of manually capturing, so you can leave that automatic capture off, and anytime you see a page that's of interest, you can right-click in the Hunchly 2 right-click menu, you can say capture. This will force a capture of this page as it is loaded. All right, so now that we've captured a couple of pages, let's go take a look at our dashboard. Cool, so we can see that we have pages viewed 3, searches done 2. All right, so it's picking up the fact that we did a couple of Google searches. We're gonna circle back on that later on. And if we click on one of these, and this is our history view, so this is the breadcrumb trail of everywhere that you've been. If I click on this page, we can now see this is the capture. So it's actually captured this page, all the images and stuff that are contained on it. Very nice. So this is a permanent copy of this page. This is not loading anything off of the internet. This page that you're looking at right here is coming straight off of your hard drive, which means that you're always going to have a copy of these Google results as they stood today. Very key and important when we're spending a lot of time looking at social media or other places, dark web work, where stuff that might be there today could be gone tomorrow. And not everything is captured by the Wayback Machine or Google Cache or other places. So countless times, really where people really get the value from Hunchly is they come back to me like 6 months later and they're like, oh man, I was on this investigation and this person like locked down their Instagram account and I couldn't go back and look at it. And I had a copy of the thing that was important to me. So that's really where that automatic capture and following you along as you browse is really critical. Now, the other thing is when we're talking about court or having to present this material to someone else or a third party or submit it as part of disclosure, is understanding kind of all of the other information around this page capture. So when we think about what's important when we're presenting to court is what did we see, meaning the content itself, where did we see it, the URL, and when did we see it, which is the time of capture. All right, so these are all the really key important things that everybody needs to think about when they're submitting evidence to a court. Now, you also notice that we have this updated timestamp, right here. And in this case with Google, it's actually set to the same time. Now, the reason for that is when you browse to Google, it loads the entire page all at once, right? So it doesn't update. There's no kind of dynamic content on a Google result. However, when you're browsing some websites like Instagram or Twitter or anything that's loading dynamic content as you scroll down the page, Hunchly will continue to do captures as you're doing that. So the critical thing there is that the last time that page updates, you will see this updated timestamp. So you are also able to say in court, or if you're doing a story as a journalist, being able to say like, I started browsing at 106 and it was last captured at 110. If that's critical for your investigation, sometimes it definitely is when talking to court. Now, the other thing is this hash. So this hash is telling you uh, kind of the forensic hash value of that page on your hard drive, right? What this will allow you to do is when you need to submit evidence for court through the disclosure process, I can email this page to a colleague or to an opposing counsel or to another law enforcement agency, and they can then take that page, run the same hash algorithm, and come up with the same result. What that's telling them and telling me is that in the process of me disclosing this information to them, the data hasn't changed. So nothing between me sending to them and them receiving it has any modifications to that evidence. Okay, so this is really a key kind of crucial thing as well when we're submitting digital evidence to a court, is having those hash values. A lot of this stuff as it relates to evidence is covered very extensively in our knowledge base. So at support.hunch.ly, we have this evidence guide right up front. And this is going to tell you about the file format that we capture in, our hashing, and some additional features that we have built in as well to help make it more difficult for folks to question your captures, right? So it's always a big concern in investigations, is someone questioning whether I manipulated a page capture. I'm using air quotes, you can't see me, but using Photoshop to change something. And so we kind of cover all of those things here and how we capture evidence so that you're better armed for those conversations. All right. So that is capturing pages. It's literally that easy. Being able to browse to a website, not think about having to capture something, not thinking about whether something is important or not, because it's automatically done for you. Everything is captured. It's on disk for you. You can just focus on doing your investigative work. All right. Any questions so far? All right. Does it support the Epic browser? That's a great question. And I want to just double check because I can't remember. I don't actually remember if Epic is supported. If it is based on Chromium, however, it will be. But let me get back to you with that one. I just had a massive sneeze and barely got to the mute button in time. All right. Do you recommend running other extensions at the same time? So generally speaking, in my investigative environment, I have other extensions running. I'll have, like, for example, LastPass running or something else. So there can be situations where ad blockers and other things can kind of interfere with what you're capturing. So I have no problem giving you the recommendation to keep running the extensions that you're already running. But definitely, if you're seeing weird capture, for example, if there's an ad blocker running or that kind of thing, try disabling that extension, doing the capture again, and see if it goes away. It really depends. We have largely been able to run okay without any conflicts with other extensions, and we don't have kind of a block list of extensions we don't recommend. But yeah, hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps a little bit there. Opera. Now, Opera, I believe, again, and I apologize, some of these browsers I haven't used in forever, but I don't recall if Opera is based on Chromium or not. If it's based on Chromium, then definitely it will still work. I just want to take a quick peek, though, because, yeah, let me take a look here. I'm actually in our own knowledge base. So all I see is other Chromium-based browsers, and I don't recall off the top of my head whether Opera is one or not. If it is Chromium-based, then definitely you'll be able to use it. Awesome. Next question, does Hunchly run on DuckDuckGo? So if you're referring to the website DuckDuckGo, yes. So Hunchly, DuckDuckGo, Hunchly will work fine capturing here, right? I don't know what they'll come up with for results for my name. Block advertising trackers. Maybe are you referring to the extension itself? I am not an annuity advisor, by the way, nor am I involved in a pension fund or an attorney, nor have I been on The Price is Right. There are seriously some far more interesting Justin Seitzes out there. That's what we're learning. Awesome. All right, another great question. Is there an option which captures the headers of the web page while you're visiting them? So when we are talking about headers and websites, what we are talking about are the HTTP headers. So I've just opened Chrome's development tools. Let me shift this thing to the bottom and I'll show you what headers they are referring to. So I'm just going to refresh this so you can see. We'll head here actually. All right, so headers. Headers are the information that your browser is actually sending to the website and receiving back. So if we click over here, so I'm in the network tab. Oh, actually, my virtual machine just became unresponsive. There we go. All right, so the headers are this piece of information that are sent from your browser to the web server and back again. So Hunchly cannot see these headers. So the reason for that is that in order for an extension to see these headers, you actually kind of have to install yourself in this very specific way that allows us to intercept every piece of traffic flowing between your browser and the website. So we don't do that, and there has been issues with ad trackers and others, and Chrome starting to limit your ability to do that. It also means that we would be kind of looking at potentially more sensitive information. So there are definitely ways that you can use proxies and other things if you do need headers for some reason. However, I've not yet received feedback from a court or jurisdiction that requires headers to be captured. I just know that they're super interesting from a cybersecurity perspective at times to be able to see some of that and for reconnaissance. So we don't capture headers, but definitely if you feel that's something you would really want, let us know and we'll add it to our R&D list of things in the future. Awesome. Lots of great questions today. This is great. Yeah, so it looks like DuckDuckGo is just a search engine website. If you need the DuckDuckGo extension, you would have to install it to your browser. That's right, Bruce. All right. Cool. So yeah, Epic is Chromium based. If the Epic browser allows extensions to be installed, then definitely. Cool. Perfect. Yeah, perfect. So it looks like Opera is as well. Awesome. Thank you, Jason. That's great. Thank you, everyone, for doing a little research there. That's great. Anything Chromium based. And if you run into issues, we do have special install instructions for kind of non-standard browsers on our knowledge base. All right, great. Great questions. Let's move on. Cool. So we've covered kind of the important parts of Hunchly, which is the data capture, that page capture, the evidence preservation piece. Now let's talk about some of the investigative tools Hunchly has to make your life easier, make you a more thorough investigator. The first and my favorite is our selector system. So this is this tab here. So what selectors are keywords effectively or any piece of information that are important to your case that you want Hunchly to track automatically. So for example, when we're thinking about selectors, they could be anything from a name, they could be an email address if you wanted, or it could be a social media username, for example. That's me on Twitter. Feel free to say hi. Cool. So what happens when you add a new selector, or even if you bulk add them? So sometimes folks have like a big, I don't know, maybe you've exported a CSV from, say, a threat intelligence tool, right? And you got a long list of names or like interesting little pieces of information. You can just copy them out of that column and paste them in here and bulk add them. Once you've added a selector, the first thing that Hunchly does is it actually searches backwards through your case, looking to see, have you already encountered this selector somewhere else, right? So we can see that Justin Seitz and JMS.py have been picked up in these page captures here. This is really useful because as I move through an investigation or a research project, I'll pick up new selectors, new email addresses. Maybe there's been something in like historical who is. And when I add it to a case and I immediately see hits, that's telling me I had actually encountered that information in the past. I just didn't know back then that it was important or that it was a useful piece of information. So I can quickly click on that selector, which will filter our history view, and I can go and take a look at where else I had found it. All right, so that's a nice little piece of that, and being able to filter on these selectors is useful. So that's the first part. Now, the other cool thing is as we're browsing, Hunchly will actually be tracking hits for each one of those selectors as we browse automatically. So even if we don't realize that one of these is on the page, or for example, if one of these selectors is buried in the source code of a page, is not visible to us like visually, Hunchly will still detect it for us. Now there's one more thing that I use as it relates to selectors, and I want to show you. So we'll head up to the settings panel. We're going to end up in the settings panel more than once today. And it's this highlight selectors feature. So what this will do for me is I can actually have the selectors get highlighted visually for me on the screen. So this means that it's gonna call my attention to them right away. Now, if you leave it on, it's going to store the highlighting in your evidence. So if you're in law enforcement or if you're working for a law firm or any of your materials can end up in court, you probably don't want this setting. You want this one on, remove before storing. Okay, so we can hit save. And this is a little trick, by the way, about changing the settings with the browser still running. What can happen is it can take some time for the settings to synchronize back and forth. And if you don't want to wait for that, if you want that setting change to be immediate, you can actually just kill your browser and start it up again. That will pull the freshest settings for you. So just something to note, as I know that folks have run into that myself as well. So if we just run another search for me, now you can see that's the selector highlighting for me. So you can see it's automatically just laying that highlighting in place. Very obvious when it's on a Google search result page, but it can be less obvious as you're kind of browsing around and doing work in other spots. Okay, so definitely very useful. And as we're browsing, it's going to continue to highlight those selectors for us. So we can see it there. It will highlight it as we're moving around. Okay, very nice. And it is tracking all those hits for us in the dashboard. So once we add a selector, as we're browsing through everything, that selector count's going to continue to go up as Hunchly is effectively hitting Control F on your keyboard, right? It's like constantly trying to find those selectors for you everywhere you go automatically. All right. Hugely useful. Is one of those things that I'm, working with a group of analysts on a threat intelligence kind of project right now, and their use of selectors is really heavy. They'll have like 50 in a case as they're tracking threat groups or digging into particular individuals or a particular host on the internet. They're heavily using them so that Hunchly's tracking all of that stuff for them. All right, and you can nicely export these matches as well. All right. Any questions about selectors, how to use them? You can actually filter on multiple selectors too. So if you, one of my favorite things to demonstrate too is that if you're looking at groups of people, so for example, like maybe a cybercrime group or something, we can say Esme Seitz, that's my cat. I can do a quick selector filter where I say, show me only pages that have both of these names on it. So that could be like two people who are both co-directors of a company, could be two people talking back and forth on social media, but you can use selectors as an analytical tool as well by filtering on them. All right, great. Cool. So what do we have here for questions? Awesome. So once you add a selector here in a case, yeah, it stays with this case. So generally speaking, selectors are case specific. So investigating Justin Seitz, he's going to have a very specific set of selectors. So selectors don't move kind of between cases generally, but if you need to move them, you can very easily either, if you only have a handful, you can just kind of you can use the just copy and paste if you need to. You can also just export the matches and copy them out of the export. It's just a CSV. You can just copy them out and paste them into the new case that you're starting. But selectors are generally kind of case specific, so they stick with this case. All right, cool. All right, next question. Do selectors count as crawlers? So no, it's not actually crawling anything. What it's doing is it's just simply looking in the underlying source code and JavaScript for those for these terms, and they are exact matches. So we don't use regular expressions or give you the ability to wildcard here. This is something we're exploring. The reason why we don't is wildcards or the more advanced, regular expressions can actually be quite expensive for your computer to do. So you'd have to imagine that like wildcard matches take a lot longer to match than a direct match. So, but again, if that's something that folks want, feel free to send us an email and let us know. You can vote for that for sure. Yeah, so just to reiterate, the selectors are from the source code underneath. So it's not just what's displayed on a page, and that's really the important part. What you see displayed to you up front on a web page is not necessarily all of the information that's on that web page. The source code underneath it actually contains a lot more information. Even just a perfect example is sometimes browse to Twitter, go to a tweet, right click and say view source, and you can see there's like a ton of information underneath that you don't get to see out front in your browser, but selector matches they match on those things as well, on what's underneath and in the JavaScript. All right, great questions. Perfect, you're very welcome. Let's move on. Talk about tags. So tags are a way for you to keep your cases organized. So depending on your investigation or what you're looking at, you may want to have categories of page captures that you have. This will make your life easier for keeping track of kind of general themes in your investigation. Also, for those of you who are disclosing to court, I definitely recommend looking at tagging pages, because when it comes to disclosure time, it's much easier to just go into a tag and export, as you will see later, than it is to like hunt through 1,000 pages looking for the right stuff, right? So how tags work are very simple. We can create some very generic tags if we want. So I can create a tag that's social media. I can also create one that's more specific. So like, let's say weapons. So maybe the individual in question has a cache of weapons, and you're interested in tagging every page that they have. So how we can use these is twofold. So when we're up here browsing around, I'll go back to our Google search result here. Let's head to LinkedIn. Let's see if this will actually load. Sometimes LinkedIn kind of blocks you. All right. So again, you notice, just want to point this out on LinkedIn, how as I scroll down, those images kind of pop in at the end, right? So that's important to note, that if you haven't scrolled down on some of these pages, it won't capture those images, because it is relying on this kind of lazy loading technique, right? Where the images don't get loaded until you scroll down into them. So that's just something to note. And if you ever have a situation where a website's not properly, it's like, hey, this isn't capturing this properly. Once you get like what you need in frame, you can always force a capture from there as well, using this right click capture option. All right, cool. So I clicked on something I shouldn't have. Story of my life. All right, cool. So what I can do here is I can go into my tags right over here on the right-hand side of the extension, and I can apply the social media tag right there. So now this page is tagged social media. In my dashboard, it's going to be tagged that way. And much the same way, as I'm browsing around doing my thing, as I'm encountering information, I can be tagging and kind of filing them away into those categories. There's also a useful kind of super tag, which is marking pages as important. So we can do that by clicking on this right there on the little star right beside the case name. That's going to mark this page as important. Also a really nice way for keeping your cases organized, particularly when I'm working in teams. I love it when people use the important marker. I'll import their case, and the first thing I'll do is I'll smack this show important pages button. And this is going to show me just the stuff that they found was really critical to what they were looking at. Okay, so this is another way of doing that. Now, again, with tags, we're able to sort and filter based on them. So I could click on the social media tag and only see the pages that were filed away there. And you can mix and match them. Again, as an analytical tool, you can mix and match them with selectors to ask questions like, show me any social media pages that had Justin Seitz as a selector, for example. Now, if you're ever doing case review, or you're kind of scrolling around through some of your older results, so you're in here maybe, and you see this, how to blow your online cover with URL previews, and maybe you wanted to tag that with something, you can easily, by clicking this show button, you can see our tags down here. So I can apply weapons or whatever tag I wanted down here, or remove a tag that you didn't want to be there. All right. And again, later on, it's very nice because I can create an export that will just export to PDF and MHTML the pages that I tagged social media or tagged weapons, for example. So it's a really nice way to be able to generate exports as well. All right. Very useful feature. You can export that list of tag pages as well to CSV, and you can also create bulk add tags. Now, tags are something that kind of can be something also used across a lot of your cases in the same way. So if you click on your settings, you can actually create default tags. So if every one of your cases, which most of ours do, has social media in it and maybe news, what this will do by creating default tags is every new case I create from here on out is automatically going to have these two tags set up and ready for me. Okay, so that can be really useful. All right. Any questions about tags that I can help to answer or marking pages as important? I should also show you to unmark or mark a page as important from your page review screen. You can use this up in the toolbar here. All right, cool. Any questions? I don't see any. I'm going to take a quick sip break here. All right, coffee sip completed. Let's talk about notes. So notes are an awesome way for you to add context to what you're seeing in your investigation. It's also a way for you to assist your future self so that when you're kind of coming back and reviewing a case, for example, what I call the Friday to Monday problem, which is like Friday I'll leave for a volleyball tournament, play all weekend, come back on a Monday, and I totally don't remember what I was working at on Friday. Notes will really help me jump back into that investigation and understand what I was doing. So how to take a note is really simple. Anywhere on the page, you can right click, Hunchly to, okay, take note. It's going to pop this little box open for you. Here's where we can say, Justin's LinkedIn profile and hit save. So what this does is it takes a screenshot of the viewable area in my browser, it does a page capture, and it stores my note text for me here. So this is going to give me a running kind of chronology as I'm taking notes and moving through my investigation, as I'm discovering more kind of information, as I'm looking at new accounts or anything like that. So here's a couple of books, right? I can right click and I take a lot of notes. So when I'm finding new information, uh, when I'm looking and discovering new pieces or even stuff that I want to kind of follow up on, I use this note-taking system to do that. So you can see that we have a screenshot to the left. And again, this is scaled down to fit, but will be a clear screenshot when you export them. This allows me to also see where it came from, what URL. I can change the text if I need to, if I made a spelling mistake or I want to update it. It might also be kind of, sometimes what I'll do is I'll use the note-taking system to kind of leave myself a little like, hey, don't forget to do X, Y, Z, so I can convert that into a to-do item. Check their, check their Facebook, right? Fact book, there we go. Cool. So I can add a to-do item that way, right? That will stay there, kind of call my attention. So again, this is super useful. You can also take notes over any previously captured pages. So if you're on like a Google page, right, and you forgot to take a note for some reason that this was important, this button up here, this add note button, will allow you that plus sign. You can add a note over top. It will create a note, a screenshot, all of that for you from your captured page and file it away. All right, very nice. Notes will also show up. You can see in your history bar, it'll tell you when there's a note that's been taken on a page. On the right hand side, you'll see that little note icon. All right. You can export these notes as well if you want to. So there's export options later. And as you will see, where I primarily use my notes is also in the report builder when I'm generating quick reports. I use my notes a lot. The new report builder allows you to do more than just notes and images. It allows you to kind of pull other data in as well. But this is definitely one that I use a lot. And again, when I come back to review a case, this is where I head often, is I come back into my notes and start scrolling through to see what was important, what was I kind of looking at, look for anything that maybe generates ideas to expand my investigation. All right, cool. Any questions about notes? I see a few other questions here. Phone numbers and email addresses are selectors, correct? Yeah, totally. They're great selectors, right? Now with phone numbers, because there's like a bazillion different ways that they can be written, what I often will do is just use the last 4 digits. So you can end up with a few false positives because there might be other things out there that have, for example, 1212 in them. But if you use the full like 10 digits here, you can run into situations where if the phone number had dashes or brackets or other things in it, you're not going to get that selector hit on it. So I take whatever phone number of interest and I'll take the last 4 digits. All right, cool. Will the notes be held only for us to view, not added to evidence? So again, when we're talking about added to evidence, your entire case is technically the body of your work, right? So when we're talking about evidence that's disclosed for court purposes, that is really up to you and your particular hearing or the rules of disclosure, what you have to disclose. So any page captures or notes or other things, depending on your jurisdiction, depending on the case, depending on the particular court order, can dictate what you have to disclose. And in some cases, police officers have to disclose their handwritten notes or logbooks or other things. And these are, part of evidentiary hearings all the time of what's part of disclosure and what isn't. But these notes are not part of your kind of core page captures, if that makes sense. These are really kind of additional information over top of the evidence that you've captured. And I consider that to be your page capture. So hopefully that helps to explain that a bit. Michael, if there's anything further you need me to elaborate on, let me know. But these are really, you would have to export these and disclose them. Yeah, cool. Excellent. Great. So now that we've covered notes, let's talk about images. So as you're browsing around, Hunchly is actually looking at every image on every page, extracting it out for you. It stores them all in a separate folder. So if for some reason, let's say you had like an image processing tool or you work in child abuse material, you can actually take all those images and feed them into your image platform to scan them or to extract text out of them, whatever you want to do. And part of that as well is we're looking for EXIF metadata in those images. So in this case, we've picked up 3 different images that had EXIF metadata in them. And if you ever want to test this, actually, you can just go to arstechnica.com, so a tech news website. Their images are loaded with metadata. They load them up. We were actually able to geolocate Captain Kirk William Shatner out in a field using that once because the EXIF metadata had GPS coordinates. So this EXIF metadata extraction happens all on its own. And you can click on the blue badge to see some of the metadata itself. So you can see the type of camera used. You can see it was a BlackBerry. I was the last human being with a BlackBerry in 2015. What version of BlackBerry I had installed. So this can be useful in a bunch of different ways. And depending on the image itself, it can also include things, and some of these might not have it, but these ones here, like you can see the lens that it was taken with. Again, this can be relevant in certain types of investigations, what type of lens was used. Very cool. So this EXIF metadata extraction is lightweight and it happens all on its own, allows you to poke through it. Maybe this one will have GPS coordinates. No, I was really hopeful we'd see one. Occasionally you get one with GPS coordinates like William Shatner, and it's really neat because we'll give you a link to a map that you can click on to go see where you think that image was taken. But it also, of course, in certain cases can expose people to risks. So that all happens all on its own. The other nice thing that we can do is we can caption images. So as we are browsing and doing our work, I would love to be able to play Elden Ring for sure if I had, I don't want to say the time, I just know I'm going to get addicted to this game, so better not to touch it. But what I can do is I can right click on this image and I can add a caption to it. So you can imagine if this is a picture of someone that you're investigating, maybe you're doing asset tracing and it's an oligarch's yacht, for example, seems to be quite a favorite thing for people to look at lately. You can right click on that picture of the yacht. You can add a caption to it. So Elden Ring game, drool. Maybe I shouldn't put an asterisk drool in there. Drool, and hit save. So what this is going to do is it's going to just isolate this image for us. We're going to have the caption underneath it. And again, this is really useful as you're doing your investigative work. If images are a part of what's interesting to you, or you want to call them out in your reporting, right click on them, select the Hunchly menu, caption this image, and then you can add some context to it. You'll be able to know where this came from as well. You can view the page that it came from, and you can build up a little gallery of all of the images that interest you or are part of your investigation. You can also, if you see stuff in the EXIF images, you can add a caption to them as well. So I can caption this image. I actually shouldn't because I don't know what's there, but I can just say like Activision logo and hit save here. Cool. All right. Okay, so any questions about images, capturing them, anything like that that I can help to answer? All right. Still hooked on Skyrim, not moved on to Elden Ring. I totally get it. So images are not tagged in the way that you can categorize pages in the same way. But definitely if that's a feature request, and all feature requests, definitely feel free to send those in to our team at support@hunch.ly. I'll just send that to everyone. So if that's something you want to be able to do, create like separate tags for those photos, you can definitely do that. Send us a request for that. Cool. No other questions, it seems, that I am seeing. So no, we actually don't do selector matching on the EXIF data. We are also, so we're exploring selector matching in EXIF, and we're also exploring the selector matching in file downloads and attachments. So it's a little bit more complex, and my background's in cybersecurity, and I always worry about like parsing document formats because there can be lots of bugs and challenges around security concerns when you start parsing documents and stuff. So we've been noodling this idea around for a while, but currently it does not. But you can do EXIF searches. So for example, I can search for BlackBerry here, and this search up here in the Hunchly search bar is actually returning a photo. It's matching inside of the EXIF data in this photo. It's not matching in text on the page. So our search actually will allow you to search through all of your pages across cases, and it also includes EXIF metadata in that search as well. So that can be a way to do that. Cool. All right. Oh, and I guess another thing to mention is if you're working on kind of a more tech advanced team, Hunchly can forward this data as you're browsing in real time to a server like Elasticsearch or some type of server that can ingest data. And when we forward the data, the EXIF data goes with it. So if we capture EXIF on a page, you get this JSON document that's got all the page details, the content, and it's got all of the EXIF metadata from any images. So you can store that in a central database for your team if you want. I'm going to do an upcoming webinar on setting up some of this stuff. But yeah, that's one of those things. Cool. Are there images that will not be captured? So there's no images that will not be captured. However, there are situations where images can be unloaded from a page when Hunchly goes to capture. So Instagram and others actually can do this where they unload images while you're scrolling and you think they're there, but they're actually gone. Yeah, so there's a Facebook page that you're seeing. If you're running into a particular issue with Facebook too, I often recommend for people use the mobile version of Facebook. So I find that the mobile version, when I'm capturing, just gives me such a more cleaner capture when I'm looking at stuff, as opposed to the full like desktop version, which has like all these extra ads and stuff all over the place. This is what I use. Again, depending on how and what you're capturing, if you run into a situation where you need to capture like some comments or something, taking a note when those comments are in screen will do the capture at the time of the note, and it will also make sure that that screenshot's got clearly what you want in it. Instagram is another tricky one where as you're scrolling down, Instagram is trying to unload all of the pictures as you're scrolling. How you can combat that is you can actually change a setting in Hunchly that is this page capture sensitivity. it's normally major changes only. You can set it to all changes and then hit save. So what this will do is as you're scrolling down Instagram, as it's unloading and loading images on you, because Instagram's not one big long page anymore. That's not actually how it works. What this will do is it will keep capturing more aggressively. So it's going to create more page captures, but it's going to capture every one of those load and unloads for you. So instead of having kind of one Hunchly entry in your history for Instagram, it's going to have about 20 or 30 as you scroll down. Cool. All right. Does it work on Snapchat, and will it alert the creator of that post? So again, depending on what you're capturing in Snapchat, like in your browser, if the web client allows you to, uh, there should not be, as far as I'm concerned, in the Snapchat map. Uh, I think that you should be able to just take a note over top of it. But of course, Hunchly's not running over top of any apps like so on mobile web clients, sorry, on web clients like Telegram, WhatsApp Web, and others, you can use Hunchly for doing those captures as well. Yeah, so the page capture sensitivity settings should be changed to all changes. Now, I only do this when I specifically need to capture like more than one kind of like page worth of an Instagram account or something. I rarely investigate like that. However, I rarely try to preserve like an entire Facebook account, right? And that's not really what Hunchly is designed for. For me, it's really more as I'm looking through an account of interest, it's the individual posts that are interesting. But you want to switch it to all changes while you're doing that social media work. If you're finding that you're not looking at individual posts, you want to try to capture as much as possible. Switch it to all changes, and then I will switch it back because I find too many captures for me just browsing around normally. It's just too many. But again, most of the investigators I know, when they're in social media, they're like, here's an interesting post, they capture it. Here's another interesting post, they capture it. There are other tools out there like X1 Discovery and others that are designed, that are literally called account preservation tools, right? So they're designed to, you point it at an account and it's going to try to preserve the entire thing. Which is a totally different exercise than doing investigative work. All right, cool. Hopefully I answered those questions. All right, let me see here. Mm, mm. All right, Susan, if you're running into capture issues on a particular page, definitely send us an email. I'm just going to send you again. I'll send you our email, and we'll help you sort that out if there's something going on. All right, perfect. Thank you. Cool. Perfect. All right, let's talk about attachments. So attachments are anything that's not a web page. That's simple. So if, for example, you're downloading file type docx, and let's go raccoons. So attachments are a way, as you're browsing around and you're pulling down files, you can be adding them manually, or you can have Hunchly automatically add them into your case. So for example, what we can do here is, and I should have done this beforehand, I can add a file manually from my hard drive. So I can just go add, okay? I can pick a picture, audio file, video, whatever you want. We can add it in. What this is going to do is bring it into your case. It makes a copy of it, hashes it for you so you can disclose it later if you need to. I can add a description of it. So I'll actually show you it first so you can see this. This is important. When you click on that right here and you get this warning, pay attention to it. So if you have downloaded a backdoored Word document or a virus or anything like that, and you click OK, it's going to run it. So we give you this warning to kind of keep you, to make sure that you're aware of it. So this is going to open this image. This is me bottle feeding a baby raccoon. Right, this is from a couple years ago, so harmless. But now I can actually annotate this. So I can say Justin feeding Smudge. That was her name. All right. Okay, so that's one way of adding attachments. Now, the other way is in our settings view, we have this attached download setting. We have it turned off by default. I always turn mine on. I do all my browsing in a virtualized environment, so I'm less concerned about and I'm also careful, I guess. I'm less concerned about downloading stuff I don't want. So what I do is I turn this on and I hit save, and I'll show you how this works. So I'm just going to actually fire this back up so we don't have to wait for the settings refresh. And I'm going to go file type docx raccoon. So I'm just looking for Word documents that contain the term raccoons. So now that I've downloaded this Word document, we can switch back to Hunchly here. And here in our attachments view, we have this Word document that's automatically been brought into our case. We know where we downloaded it from, and if necessary, I can annotate it, right? So I can just add an annotation here. Here's this file that I downloaded, right? Um, Same thing when you're browsing to PDFs, Hunchly will automatically pull them in for you. So PDFs are kind of something that a lot of us see and interact with a ton. So this is really nice where as you're browsing, Hunchly will pull those PDFs down and bring them in for you. All right. The other thing too is that we have a mobile app. If you haven't seen it before, iOS and Android. Okay, so what this will allow you to do is add files into a little Hunchly case on your mobile. And then what you can do is you can export those files out of your mobile device. So if there's screenshots or something from a victim or witness, you can import that mobile case into Hunchly, and all of those attachments from Hunchly Mobile will show up in here. Okay, they'll show up right in here. And it is free. It's free to use as well. All right, cool. So Hunchly Mobile is not a web capture tool. It is like this little container that allows you to add files to it, because occasionally we have to do that as investigators. There's just no other option. We have to use a mobile app, and we're literally either like doing a screen recording or we have to take screenshots as we're going. And Hunchly Mobile is a great way to kind of get hashes and bring that stuff over into our desktop so we can continue investigating. Awesome. Yep, perfect. Oh, thanks, John. You're my biggest fan. That's great. Great. So let's talk about the searches tab. This is where we are capturing any of the keyword searches that you've done on the major search engines. So this is really useful if you ever run into dead ends, for example, and you're like, I don't know what else to search for or to do. I'll often jump into this searches panel. And it's a good reminder that I've only looked at 2 search engines, and there are far more than that. You know, it might be a good time for me to go check Bing or Yandex or other things for these search terms. Or another big one is I'll find that I've discovered selectors, added them in as a selector, gone off and done, continue to do investigative work, but didn't actually even search for these selectors, like didn't do a general keyword search for them. So this is really a way to kind of track some of that stuff and to help you be a more thorough investigator, help to understand where you're spending your time doing your searches. And you can clean these up too if you want. If you've got duplicates or anything like that, you can get rid of these search terms as well. So again, very useful, at least for myself. It helps me when I'm doing case review, particularly if I feel like I'm kind of stuck in an investigation. This is a good place to kind of come and generate some additional ideas. All right, any questions about searches, attachments, either of those things so far, or images, notes, anything backwards that you need help answering? I'm gonna take a coffee sip. All right, perfect. Yeah, definitely, Susan. Send our team an email, and then they'll be able to give you a hand on some of those capture issues that you're having. Definitely, they'll be able to help kind of dig in to see. Yes, you are. That's how you're showing up. Are you using a? So that's not actually Susan's not actually your name. Well, very good cover. Well, that's what it shows up as on my screen. So perfect. If you can send, I won't give away your real name now. So if you can send an email into our team, that would be great. That is so funny. You probably were like, why isn't he answering my question? Awesome. Okay, great. So everybody else, we have somebody with an undercover name, Susan, and Susan is not Susan, who thought I was ignoring her questions. That's not great. My apologies. Awesome. All right, cool. Let's move on to data. So the data tab is where we are extracting little pieces of information off of every web page and the source code, and we're trying to pull things out for you that might be useful as threads that you can pull on, or maybe where you can do additional searches. So for example, we'll pull out tracking codes. So like Google tracking codes, for example. So this is telling us that this Google tracking code is being used on the Bellingcat domain. I can apply this as a filter so I can see anywhere that this tracking code was picked up on any of the pages that we've browsed to. We can then take this tracking code and run it in searches like public www.com or analyzeid.com. So really what we're trying to do here is just bring this data forward to you in a way that will be useful for you to kind of continue your investigation, to kind of punch it into other tools. Email addresses as well can be really nice. So we got this email address pulled from Ars Technica. So anywhere that we're able to pull email addresses, we'll extract them out and bring them forward for you. Again, this can be really useful. Sometimes I've discovered email addresses in this way that were just hidden in the source code of a page, for example, and I didn't see them, which kind of gives me other investigative opportunities as well. So again, this is kind of a nice little feature that's bringing this stuff forward for you. And this is us just using kind of stored regular expression patterns to extract that information out. All right, cool. Any questions about the data tab or anything that it's pulling forward? Not seeing any yet. We are nearing the end here. Thankfully, we're just going to be covering exports, so we'll probably run a little bit over. Lots of questions. So we don't, this is a good question. Do we extract usernames? So it's a tricky one. We do not have, we've had them and then removed them and then had them and then removed them because they were generating false positives in a lot of cases for us. But again, it really, we are looking for ways to kind of get this right. So if you have like a particular platform you really want usernames for, let me know. The other thing is like often what I do is like, I use usernames as selectors, or I'm looking at parsing stuff on the other side. So I'll use data forwarding and I use like a much more kind of expanded search method to try to figure out usernames. But no, we're not. We've removed a number of our username parsing things out because we were generating a lot of false positives. All right. Yeah, we can definitely provide you a list of objects that we currently parse. Definitely, Joe. Okay, cool. Um, if you're providing input into a page like a login credential, what's the best way to capture these if you want them part of your investigation? So what you'd have to do when you're logging in is you'd have to kind of use the show hide on the password screen to actually do it, and then you would use that. Once you have your, once you've started to log in, you would use just like, you'd right click on the page and say take note or capture. In some cases, a site won't expose the show password functionality to you. So what I would do in that case is I would take a note of the particular page where I'm at, and I would say logged in with user pass combination. So now you have a timestamp and a record of when you logged into that service, and it's going to be stored in your notes. Now, keep in mind, you're have the potential of exposing that username and password. There's security concerns there, but if you needed to do that or wanted to do that, there's a couple of options there for you. Cool. Perfect. No problem, Joseph. Keep asking questions. This is what I'm here for. Honestly, it's not, these things can run quite long depending on questions, so I don't mind it. I prefer it, in fact. Awesome. Awesome. No problem, Mark. Keep the questions coming. Great. All right. So we've covered all the wild and wonderful ways to get data into Hunchly, how it processes it. Now let's talk about how to get data out of Hunchly. So the first and most important button on the Export tab is the Export Case button. What this is going to do when we export a case is it's going to take all of your case information, pages, notes, selectors, all that stuff, and is going to store it in a zip file for you. So this zip file right here that I saved to my desktop, this has everything in it, which means I can put it on my backup server and I can import this case at any point in the future and see exactly where I was. Or I can send this case to a colleague, they can import it, and they can go through all of my Hunchly data as exactly as it was when I saw it. Now, the other cool thing in the case exports is that we have a lightweight dashboard that's inside of it. So if we open it up, I'm going to open it in Edge. We have this lightweight dashboard. It's just a report.html. So you can hand a Hunchly case to somebody who doesn't have Hunchly, and they just need to open the zip file, open this, and they get their own little dashboard where they can go through the page captures that you have. They can take a look at what you were looking at, right? If they want to actually view the page, by clicking on the page, this is loading it in their browser. Okay, this is not going out to the internet. This is loading it straight from your export. So this is really good. They're actually able to browse your own little Wayback in this way. You just need anything Chromium based to do this. Okay, you don't need Hunchly installed at all to do this activity. So all of our pages are there. Whoops, I completely closed the wrong tab. We have our notes, photos that we captioned, and our attachments are in here as well. Okay, very nice little lightweight dashboard that goes out with our case exports. The other cool thing for folks who, and we do have this, so we just had a forensic tool called Forensic One in, I want to say they're based in Sweden, yeah, Sweden or Denmark. I actually don't remember now, but they just built a Hunchly ingester. Other tools have done this as well. They've built specific either Hunchly case importers or data importers. The cool thing is if you're also a data nerd or you're looking at post-processing Hunchly cases, in the case data folder, there are CSVs and JSON files of all the major data types. So for the data nerds on this call, you have a way of actually processing a Hunchly case in code, pulling things out that are useful. All right, cool. So that's our main case export. If I want to import a case back in the future, we hit that plus button, import case. I can create a new case or I can merge it. So new case or merge it to an existing case, pick the zip file, hit import, go grab a coffee, and Hunchly will import that case back in for you. All right, cool. Any questions about that so far? Cool. How do I find a list of browsers that are Chromium based? That's actually a good question. It might be as simple as just a list of all Chromium based browsers. Vivaldi, Brave, Edge, Epic, Slim, Torch, Komodo. There's a ton there, holy. So this is from 2019, but it looks like there's quite a long list. Yeah, so probably just a Google search. And even it looks like even the Wikipedia entry might have a bunch of stuff in it too. So probably good for me to bone up on some of that as well. You bet. Great. Cool. Now, we also have custom export options, so we can export pages, and this is a big one. Of course, we all want to know how to export pages. So in our custom export, we can export pages like this, so we can say all pages, pages marked social media, or important, for example. Okay, so that's kind of option one for exporting pages to PDF and MHTML. We can also, for example, if we just wanted to export a handful of pages, or maybe these two, or even just one, we can hit the page export button here. So I can send these out to my desktop. This is going to produce PDFs and MHTML files of both of these pages. All right. Or if you're in a page capture itself, you can also just go export page from here. And then you get to pick MHTML or PDF. All right. Cool. So that's that. We also have a selective export option. So this is where you can kind of pick, I just want to build an export file that has like some very specific things like notes in a single PDF, or I want my pages marked important and my caption images. That's all. And then that export will only contain those things. So it's more selective, and it's not something that you'd be able to import later, but it is kind of this selective way of exporting. All right, so those custom export options, always worth kind of exploring some of those things. And again, in most of my cases, I'm either exporting a full case or just often I'll just do the notes to a PDF real quick too. If I have to like debrief somebody on something very quickly, that will be a way that I will do that. Awesome. Any questions about that before I jump into the report builder and have a coffee sip? All right, nothing there. Cool. Report builder. All right, so this is our brand new report builder. I've demoed it a few times over the past few months as I was using kind of pre-release builds. But our old report builder was not so great. This one is much better. We're still going to give you more options and more features, and I know people are starting to use it in higher numbers now, which is great. So how do we use this report builder? Well, it's a very simple interface where we can kind of add various pieces of case data, a title page, that kind of stuff as well. So for example, we'll start off by just giving it a title. So we're just going to say Justin Seitz, that's who we're investigating. And we have this default section here. Generally, you want a title page. So I added that by clicking up here in the top right, add title page. The author is Justin Seitz. Very nice. And we're just going to say Hunchly as my organization. I can add a logo if I want. Okay. I'll show you how to set some of these default options as well. So I can fold up this title page. And now I have a section, a report section. So we can call this like evidence if we want, or findings, or whatever. I know some of you on here, I've read some of your public reports, and they're amazing, by the way. So good to call you out there. You know who you are. And so we can name this whatever we want. We can have multiple sections. There's a few options now as we want to add case data. So I'm going to click the add case data button here. Sorry, I scrolled it out of view. All right. So these screenshots are pulled from our browsing as we were browsing and capturing pages. I can add them in. Okay. So I can add attachments if there are attachment details that we want. This is not embedding this actual attachment. It's embedding basically a kind of an information box that shows you what this attachment was. So I can add this attachment. Maybe I want to add this caption image of Activision. Okay, so I can add those to the report if I want. I can shuffle them around if I need to. I can add a text box. So if I want to add some context here, important documents about raccoons. Holy spelling, Justin. And video games. All right, so I can add that in if I want. I can reshuffle stuff around if I need to. Same with the text field. And go back and add more case data or put a new section in, additional findings or follow-up work or whatever you need to do. I'm going to add some more case data. Maybe I want some notes, so I'll pop these 2 notes in. Okay. Now you can also, in this case data, you can start to filter things down based on selectors and tags to help just pull out the stuff that you want from any pages that had those. So if I add this, I had no notes that had selector hits on them. I can go into screenshots, right? So 6 of 6, these are the screenshots that had selector hits in them. So these are the pages that had them. I'm going to add this if I want. I can filter them too. So if I want to filter, based on URL or something, if I'm looking for a particular screenshot, I can add that into my report. So this is really a much nicer way for us to build out longer reports. Now, again, I don't have a particular preference when I'm building these reports in Hunchly because I have generally a deliverable template, a reporting template that I use in Microsoft Word. So often what I do is just one section, push my notes and other stuff that's important into it, export it to Word, and I have my Hunchly report open on the left, my existing Word template on the right, and then that's how I manage it from there. Okay, so then when we export, I'll mention this too, you can add your capture history. So this is literally just a table of every URL you browse to. So it adds it as an appendix to the report. We can definitely do that. Cool. Oh, how did I first find the report builder? So the report builder, if we're back in the normal case view like this, click export right here, this export tab, and then open report builder. Okay, cool. So I can go export report, include table of contents. So again, if this is like a very quick, and this happens sometimes in investigations where you're just asked, can you go quickly check this thing or check these handful of websites? I'll kick out a very quick PDF so that I can turn it around very quickly. Or again, I will use Microsoft Word for more lengthy reports, which is a more that's where we generally write our long reports or other things, right? Is a word processor of some kind. You can hit export. We'll send it off to the desktop. I'll just show you what this looks like. That's this PDF right here I just produced. Okay, there's the logo, my title page. got a table of contents that I added, so I can shoot down there if I want. Okay, it's got the details around this. There's the text that I added in underneath it. This is our note, so it's got kind of all of the crucial details around this particular note or image that we've captured. Here's an attachment. So again, the attachment that we took, the description field actually didn't fill it out in this case, but that's where you annotate it in the attachments back in the dashboard. So again, important to add annotations to your attachments. I always do, or I get rid of them because having files laying around that I don't know what they're used for is I don't find particularly helpful in a lot of cases. So again, this is that very simple reporting format. And this is also why, like in Word, I'm able to manipulate those tables or remove stuff that I don't need. Like maybe I don't need the hash for this particular thing, or I just need the URL and capture date with the screenshot. And I'm going to produce another zip file or the full case later with my MHTML files and the rest of my case data. But again, PDFs are great for just like very short, to the point, very quick exports. All right. Any questions about this? I actually see some questions. Can you share a pre-built custom report like a template? So we don't have any templates, but you do have the ability in your settings, for example. So I'll go back out of the report builder. In your settings, you can actually create, there is a way for you in here to create some default report sections and to kind of pre-fill the author, organization name, logo. The classification is if, for example, you need to have top secret stamped in the header and footer of every page, then you can put top secret in this field. The default report sections will allow you, for example, if you always want to have an executive summary and a findings and a conclusion, then when the next case you create, when you open the report builder, these sections will already be pre-built for you. They'll be sitting there waiting for you to add case data to them. So we don't have templates in a sense, but we do allow you to kind of build out some of this stuff into a templated form to save you a few mouse clicks in the future. All right, cool. Can I have the template display some predefined text in certain fields? So yeah, in certain fields up here, you definitely can. There is also ways for you to add case information into your cases. So this is not necessarily for always reporting, but you can add case metadata here. So for example, if you had like investigator or something that you wanted as a field, you could put this in here. Okay, so there are ways to kind of build out fields like that in your cases as well. And again, as you use this report builder in your investigations or in your work, like feel free to send us feature requests. Like it'd be great to be able to have X, Y, Z, or maybe you have like in the case of like a document disclaimer, right? That you want to have added into every page or at the bottom of every report, like a default kind of text field as you're mentioning. Definitely send us an email. Let us know. We really build things that our customers request. We don't generally build things and then kind of hand them to customers and say, here you go. All of our features and refinements are really customer driven. It's you all who tell us what you want, and then it's our job to implement it. All right. Any other questions about any of this? We're over by about 13 minutes. That's amazing. I find that when I launch Hunchly to capture stuff that I keep overwriting the past case. Do you have any tricks that can prompt me? Yeah, so this is actually one we've been looking at potentially creating some way of alerting you when you kind of jump into a new case and start capturing stuff and it ends up going over top of like, let's say we start an ESME case and I start investigating, but I haven't switched to the ESME case yet, so everything starts getting filed away in the Justin case. There's a few strategies for that. Usually when I'm done with one case, I export it, then I delete it. So I'll export that zip file if I'm done with the Justin Seitz case, and then I click here and I go delete. So this is just going to prevent me from doing that. The other thing too is that if all of a sudden you realize it and you've captured like 3 pages that don't belong in the Justin case, you can just select those pages and you can say move to a different case, and I can move them off to the case that they belong in. Okay, perfect. Any other questions I can help to answer? A lot of you hung in here for the duration. That's pretty good. You're very welcome, Jason. Uh, yeah, no problem. Feel free to reach out to me as well. If you have any follow-up questions, Justin at hunch.ly. If I can't solve it for you, then I will definitely have one of my team members do that. Feel free to take a look at our YouTube channel as well. We'll be sending out an email afterwards to let you know that the recording is up and done, but our YouTube channel is just at YouTube/C, or you can just type Hunchly into YouTube and you'll be able to see it. So we have this channel here with all of our videos. So the last one I did was on scanning Tor hidden services and using Hunchly for dark web stuff, malware, Maltego, all kinds of stuff that we've done in previous webinars. And of course, I run these desktop training ones every couple of weeks or once or twice a month usually. Awesome. Thank you very much for showing up. Great. I don't see any other questions, and everybody's been on here for a long time, and I really appreciate you hanging out. So if there's anything else I can help with, please don't hesitate to reach out. And definitely, if you have feature requests or anything else, we definitely love hearing from you all. So don't hesitate. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening or morning, whatever you have ahead, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much.